So counter-narrative news in a previous episode, which would encourage people to watch if they haven't, or maybe refresh if they have, was exploring really gender, race and class as it pertains to the jungle drum and bass scene, honing in on the level or lack of representation of women in the scene, particularly as MCs. Here we're going to be exploring the participation of women in the Grime scene, which starts really around 2000 and the turn of the millennium. And we're going to just look at the roots of that, going back to really hip-hop and rap and the women's involvement in that in the late 1980s. But before we do that, we'd like to thank Lady MC, who we reached out to about representation, particularly of black young women in drum and bass jungle as MCs. And thanks, Lady MC. She did remind me that Chickaboo and also MC Stars, who does back-to-back kind of routine with MC Deezer, are black women in the drum and bass scene jungle as MCs. So let's check out Chickaboo and Stars.
We're never gonna stop selection. Alright, you know the flight in this one. Oh, listen up and listen up and listen good. When we step in the place, you know we do it like we should. We walk the streets and avenues in our neighborhood. When we come in the place, you know the flights, you do it good, good, good. Well, great, you know we do it better. And when we step up in the place, I've got that chatter, that pitter patter. Yeah, you know when we step in the place, we're always trying to say what? Black lives matter. Ooh-ha! One time when we step in, 2 time when we vibe it, 3 time, you know when we step in the place, we fire it. 1 time for the mind, you know, 2 time when we rock the show, 3 time and you know we step up in the place like yo.
DJ Innovator rolling out the vibe.
Blood, why you talking that crud? Why you fronting like you got barred? Why you walking around like a G when your name's been dragged up all through the mud? That flex is done, you can't come right here for a spud. We don't deal with rock, so go fix up. Come chat to me when you're stud. Come chat to me when you're serious. Come chat to me when you're real. Don't come chat to me about bandos, screws and stacks of packing that still. Know my deal, I'm just real. That's not real, just stop boy. Acting like that's your life, that's not your life. Stop watching Top Boy. I got the drop boy, I come like man's not hot boy. Got a big shack from that big stack that I'm making up my job boy. I'm on job boy, you're some shop boy. I'm exclusive, you're some stop boy. While I'm blazing on my Cali, your alley smells like bok choy and I've got choice. I could graft a 9 to 5, I could trap to stay alive or make money when I write. Cause I know the game and I know the rules and I break them just for fun. You can give me all you got but guarantee you'll get bugged.
Who's that fella? Who's that guy, yo? Who's that brother? Who's that fella? Who's that guy, yo? Like, who's that fella? Who's that guy, yo? Who's that brother? Can't fuck with the team, not me, not redder. D not stars cause you'll get dead off. Never that, never that.
Yeah, amazing stuff from Chickaboo. Really like the fact that she shout out the whole black struggle around Black Lives Matter, and very much so the sound system culture is at the grassroots and it constantly generates a kind of orientation towards that, despite its commercialization into kind of white privileged kind of capitalist oriented interests. And also Stars, amazing MCing. Thank you, bigging up the Stars and Deezer as well. Thanks for repping on the mic. Fantastic stuff. Really appreciate it. And thanks also again to Lady MC for signposting towards that and helping with the research in that regard. So before we go to the grime scene, you have to understand, so children are born and they grow up and they're influenced by all these kind of social, political, cultural things, music, film, dance, food, dress. And it's all to do really with the level of representation of the oppressed, of oppressed women, of black working class communities, of all working class communities, etc. It's all to do with what's called the balance of forces. The balance of forces is the strength of which the grassroots have in cultural, political, social movements relative to the oppressive state and the population that supports the racism and the capitalism, etc. of the state. So the balance of forces today is railed against the grassroots. The right-wing, far-right forces in the government and in the British public are much stronger and have been the strongest, arguably, ever since sometime around the 1950s. Whereas the balance of forces, particularly in the 60s and in the 70s, in terms of what's favourable to us as oppressed working class communities, the balance of forces were more favourable to us back then. So in the 1980s, you have a whole bunch of women rappers in hip-hop who are influencing the young people and the children around that time, and particularly influencing young girls to say, hey, you can do what we're doing, you can do it as well as we're doing, if not better, so you might want to consider it. So we're talking about people like 1986, the big Push It smash song by Salt and Pepper. We were all doing Running Man dance to that. I remember back in the youth club at the primary school. There would be a corner of the youth club where the working class girls would kind of be the de facto DJs. They had the kind of cassette stereo tape, and they would play the music. They would play Rebel MC, they would play Salt and Pepper, and these were the hits of the day, and they were all quite conscious and confident and positive, and especially Salt and Pepper, very swaggerish, self-confident, just very assertive kind of cultural expression, was just really impressed upon that, you know, women can be confident and kind of relatively liberated and demand respect around that. So that was amazing. And then you had Nena Cherry, who was, you know, London based with her smash hit Buffalo Stance as well in the late 80s, a chart topper. Everyone knew that. Again, strong black young woman asserting herself culturally, making successes around that, and in so doing influencing young people and children. Then you have two other London-based hip-hop groups in the late 80s. You have the Wee Papa Girl Rappers with their big hit in 1988 called We Rule, great track. And then you have the Cookie Crew as well with Rock the House in 1987. So you do have, you know, quite a healthy amount of England and London-based female rappers as well. And of course, in the US context, you have Moni Love, who also comes from, she's actually comes from England and kind of makes a home in the US. You have Queen Latifah, you have MC Lyte, and others as well, who are on the scene. And into the 90s then, who do we have? That's kind of young women representing in these kind of dance sound system cultures. Perhaps the most significant female rapper is Lauryn Hill, who in 1994 with the group Fugees released the Blunted on Reality album. Amazing pioneering album, absolutely incredible stuff. It was such a joy, electrifying joy to receive that in one's mid-teens. And Lauryn Hill was probably the artist head and shoulders above Wyclef Jean and Pras as well, the two other band members. Of course, Lauryn Hill and Wyclef have a very bad falling out, but that's another whole story. So Lauryn Hill, amazing lyricist, incredible resistant cultural lyrics, very beautiful and confident and absolutely extremely influential. And also you have Ladybug Mecca as well in the Diggable Planets group with the first pioneering album in 1993, Reputation of Time, and 1994 an incredibly one of the most brilliant experimental albums in hip-hop, which is Blowout Comb. And there's also other MCs in around this time. By the late 90s really you have people like Missy Elliott, Foxy Brown, Little Kim, who despite some levels of sexualization, and someone can argue that's kind of negative and that's a valid part of the conversation, but nevertheless these were still successful, very confident, expressing, articulating, good, amazing lyricists at the top of their game. And of course that's going to also show young women and girls that, look, I can be an MC, you know. So that's also, it has a positive side to the influence as well. So in the late 90s as well, you have a whole bunch of R&B singers and some rappers in the garage scene in London and in England, and the garage scene comes out of the whole disco and house scene as well. It's also a part of the whole sound system culture, which originates in Jamaica from the 1960s. And so in the late 90s, you have people like Shola Amar, fantastic R&B singer all over garage culture. You have the Sweet Female Attitude Band with their big hit Flowers, a beautiful tune. But really, it's at the turn of the millennium that you have suddenly a new generation of young female MCs and rappers in particularly garage going into grime. But to give some social, political, cultural context to this period, we have growing racism and poverty and oppression throughout the 90s, because really from the early 70s until today, it's a general period of declining defeats for our grassroots in terms of the strength of us on the social, political, cultural levels. So, but because people are being more pressured, the increasing oppression and exploitation as we proceed through the 90s does also spark the need to express. So that's why that MC culture goes in to drum and bass jungle, on the Pirates, and in house and garage all through the 90s. The Pirates is the main way of like mass grassroots black-led cultural communication of young people, and it was an absolutely beautiful thing. And we've talked about pirate radio and the way the BBC and One Extra kind of destroyed that whole culture in a strategic way for the British state. So I reference people to episode on that, which also talks about Tim Westwood's role in all of that. And it's very important, actually, referencing Tim Westwood and the BBC, because also in terms of entertainment and culture, in terms of music, this is all happening in a society which is very exploitative and oppressive, and of course organized, privileged, elite white men, by and large, but not only, will seek to use their power to prey and to be predators upon especially young women and girls. And that was very much the case with Tim Westwood. But the whole scene is saturated with that racism, capitalism, misogyny, homophobia. It is, because every social scene is a reflection of the greater society. So the more we struggle, the more we unite and we push that back, the more representation we can have, and the more diversity that's necessary and important in the sense of justice. In this regards, and what we're talking about is very important. So, in the turn of the century, who do we have? Obviously, Lisa Mafia and the So Solid crew. The So Solid crew are a very important grassroots movement and force in the garage scene, going into the emerging grime scene at the turn of the millennium. Lisa Mafia, competent MC, but only one woman, and a part of a dozen young men in the So Solid crew, so that's interesting. And also in 2001 you have the amazing tune by DJ Sticky and Miss Dynamite with Boo. Let's check out a little clip of Boo.
Tippity the dynamite to get the people them lively. And them a shout ooh, inna you head. Lyrical shot get popped by spread. Gotta do something that everybody tread. Make the gunman run a cup and Tyson. Them a shout ooh, inna you head. Lyrical shot get popped by spread. Gotta do something that everybody tread. Make the gunman run a cup and Tyson. Get it with a little bit of bass and drum. You know you're so fucked up or I fuck the gun, because back in the day was all about fun. Taking you back on my lyrical tongue, my only weapon. Fuck powder, fuck pills, I frill, no cost, don't kill. Yeah, stand still. I'm a licky with a vibe that you can feel. Because it's not about them attitude, and it's not about them advice. No matter who you are and no matter what you do, you can get some of our natural eye. It's not about them attitude, it's not about them advice. No matter who you are, you got what you do. And I'm a shout boom.
So there you can see Miss Dynamite, amazing lyrical talent and ability, articulation, and very much a continuation of that whole reggae, ragga sound system culture going into garage and grime, very much represented by Boo and the way she chats it down on that track. Miss Dynamite becomes a hugely influential person at the grassroots, particularly for young women and girls. I actually said to her directly about 10 years ago when I bumped into her at some event that, thank you for being the big sister to the grassroots, especially for the young women, and they couldn't have a better big sister than you in terms of her political articulation, pushing back on the attempts at normalizing the kind of just the sexual tokenism and the superficiality towards girls. She really resisted that, articulated a counter narrative, pardon the pun, a counter voice, articulation, narrative, struggle. It was just amazing to have her influence on her first album around that time as well. Then you also have a whole bunch of MCs through the 2000s. We have to also mention MIA, who comes out with her hit Galang in 2003 for the first time. South Asian, not only South Asian, but a Tamil young woman who becomes a major part of the kind of sound system culture at that time. It's kind of kind of break beaty, broken beat kind of stuff, kind of genre. But, again, very creative artist, a decent, very good and decent lyricist, very interesting lyrical content, fusing the whole kind of anti-colonial social struggle of the Tamil people back in the homeland with the whole politics of radical migration and the politics around that, and fusing it with the kind of working class black-led sound system culture and the rave culture. Just really, really, really important. So you have people like MIA, Miss Dynamite, Lisa Mafia, even groups like Mystique, but are significant, all women, all black women group of kind of garage, R&B, kind of grimy kind of elements to it. So this is all influencing people. And I remember back when I helped to run an anti-war youth club in the spring of 2003. It was called the Anti-War Youth Club, and then the name changed to the Serve the People Youth Club. We were recruiting and successfully worked with dozens of people in the working class black community of Southall in West London. And we organised this and took a lead on this because tens of thousands of high school children were walking out in protest against particularly the British and US-led colonial military operation of invasion, occupation and destruction of Iraq. But also it was a protest about other things. It was an articulation of rebellion on a mass level of working class people, both black, brown and white across the country. So it was important to kind of really try and do something with that. And I think at the grassroots, the Anti-War Youth Club was one of the only real practical things to engage that whole social moment of young people walking out. I remember leafleting amongst high school students in and around the area of Southall and the youth club, and there was a young South Asian girl, must have been around 15 years old, gave her a leaflet, said, look, we got MC workshops and stuff, and she just started, just like sharing her lyrics, and she was, and this is really interesting because what garage going into grime sound system culture, what it does, it allows more space, literally in the music, for more MCs and lyricism. So in the grime period in the early 2000s, London and England-based grime MCs become some of the best rappers in the world, any rappers. Just incredible articulation, a very kind of confrontational attitude, asserting oneself and one's kind of social, cultural class against the powers that be. It was kind of like, it was rebellious, and it's no coincidence and it's no surprise that whole kind of political cultural expression also kind of is the proverbial soundtrack to the August 2011 four-day uprising of the Council of State Youth after the police lynching and killing of Mark Duggan at the Broadwater Farm Council Estate in North London, in Tottenham. So that's really important. And also then you have a whole bunch of other female artists, really. You have a Roxanne, I'm going to big up Roxanne. Lady Sovereign is very important as well, a white working class woman in a black-led kind of youth culture and music, did some really great important cultural products and expressions and movements there, so big up Lady Sovereign and Roxanne. Going to Roxanne performed in 2011 at the Youth for Smiley Culture event. Smiley Culture was killed in 2011 by police at his residence. And Smiley Culture was a significant member of the sound system culture and a leader in that in the 80s, along with Tipper Irie and other people, who really articulates the kind of the social, political, cultural resistance of the grassroots through his music. One of his most well-known tracks is about being harassed in his car by police officers. And we're going to talk more about Smiley Culture. But here's Roxanne. I project managed this event back in 2011 at the Fridge Bar Brixton. Thank you, big it up to the Fridge Bar Brixton crew for allowing us to have that space for free. Swiss was there from So Solid. He performed Dirty Goods, again, a very kind of heavily reggae influenced MC in the grime culture, performed this amazing, beautiful music. Akala was there. It was a really fantastic event. But here's Roxanne with a bit of a cappella at the event.
Roxanne, so it's like out the door and into war. It's like I'm constantly fighting over what I'm in this for. Don't prove it, I'm in here moving military. Yeah, I'm tribal, so sticks and stones round here could lead to symmetry. And don't speak to speak, it's best you listen and mimic me. It's peak to me, you might get beat up physically. Been training since day on my aiming to take out anyone if it means me staining. I could be bad mind and leave you laning, but I'll wake up to raise up stakes. Yeah, I train tough, I don't need breaks. Bring our names up and watch their face look shook and shake. We stand as a tribe, we feel no pain. It's like, I'm so confused, I'm nothing like yous. Most MCs are pricks and all you chicks are just rude, I'm not amused. Only height you've got is on your shoes, and the only weight you drop is when your body starts to lose. Pissed off, I think I've just got my fuse, cause I'm looking to bun it clot and walk up with your food. Only thing you really know is that I'm not from here, but now that I'm here, so for you this is the wrong year. Walk on dear. Roxanne, I got songs here, it's kinda looking strong here. Fuck you all, I'm gone clear.
So you can see she absolutely, tore down the place, and it was amazing to have her there, and big it up, Roxanne. So going into the first decade of the 2000s, around the time of the Youth for Smiley Culture event in 2011, you have, people like Shiesty, you have then Lady Lesher, who steps on the scene around 2011. Lady Lesher is probably the best MC in the grime scene of any rapper in the grime scene, be it men or women. And this is quite annoying things, like, because when you think about the grime scene, what's kind of what predominates is the male artists. But Lady Lesher is as good as any of the male artists, if not better. She could go back to back and have a clash, and she would come out winner time and time again against all the top guys on the mic in the scene. And that's really irritating, because of course the women have as much talent as the guys. But because of sexism in the scene, because of racism and sexism and this whole classist, capitalist culture, they're peripheralized, they're marginalized, but there is pushbacks, and it's good to see like movements to push for women's representation and black women's representation in the scene, in the grime scene particularly, that we've noticed recently, and all power to these movements. And we wish there to be a lot more like that, and a much more healthier, bigger, burgeoning scene that really fights back against the injustices in this regards in that. Anyway, here's a bit of Lady Lesher for our enjoyment.
I hold it down like a Snapchat, go over your head like a snapback, uploaded a pic, double tap that, and your flow so old, granddad. Bruh. It's just banter, yeah. I'm way too much like a black cap. Aye boss. What you Snapchatting in the club for? Just dance man, like yo fam a lamb, yo fam a lamb. Ain't no girl better than, I'm on the roads, caravan, let me do this fast, Ramadan, cause it's going down, avalanche, I'ma keep it short, paragraph, Queen B, Rain, and Iraq, take it off Israel, Nazareth. Oh Jesus, oh Lord, oh Jesus, a couple of snaky friends, just Adam and Eve lost, and there's no debate on who's better. Come on, I'll turn a man to a girl like Bruce Jenner, shout down the dance like me broke down the dance like I be the one they love, I be the don. They know where I'm from, 01 to the 21. Yo brethren, where is your hairline gone? I can't believe it, I can't believe the cheek. Some girls wake up and don't even brush their teeth. That's a dead thing, that's a bad breath thing. How could you talk my name but you ain't even brushed your teeth?
Just very witty, sharp, lyrical ability is sharp and on point. It's just amazing. Just total fire there from Lady Lesher and all of her other things. Big it up, Lady Lesher. You're absolute inspiration. Thank you for what you do. Big it up the 0121 crew, the Birmingham crew, particularly Handsworth Massive. Forgive me for everyone else in Birmingham, but my heart's on the Soho Road over there. So big it up the resistance and the grassroots there. And then we come to the last decade or so. You have people like Nole as well, who's very influential. Jazz Kahina. OG Nikki is very interesting, very kind of one might argue very negative sexualization and internalization, but very talented person. A young black woman from Birmingham as well, who's still on the scene. Perhaps a separate episode of that, because her initial articulations on the mic, which were technically very, very good, but the lyrical content many people found very problematic. Jazz Kahina did actually counter response to her open letter to OG Nikki, but it's been taken off YouTube because of some copyright nonsense, and we can't find a copy of that. If anyone has a copy of that, please do send it over. We'd like to share that. It's very interesting. And then more recently, Nadia Rose steps on the scene with her 2016 Squad hit and the brilliant music video. Let's check that out.
Guess who's back? But you never left. Yes, I did. I rose from the dead, and now I'm here to kill them with flows and some punchlines that'll go over your head. Turn back, I'm a caution ahead. I'm your worst nightmare, stood over your bed. So them girl try call me, but I smell defeat like a hole in your bread. Wow, she's sick and she's bad. She sings and she raps, she shit and she's whack. They talk all that chat, but when they see me, don't speak none of that. Cause nobody bad like me. I'm fucking higher than a block of flats in Battersea. Whoa. And I'm with my team. Squad 8, where you at, my J? I'm rolling 10, yeah, up in that squad. That's what.
Nadia Rose, you can see just bright, witty, lyrical ability is just excellent. A good collective representation of her crew and that whole kind of collective movement at the grassroots reflected from the video. Beautiful, beautiful stuff. But I have to share one personal favorite clip of Nadia Rose, and because she references the kind of the resistance around Emmett Till and racism, etc. So please.
Yeah, that's money for real. All the love that's in the world could this money fulfill. When they bail me, they get air like I'm Uncle Phil. Rest in peace, Uncle Phil. And more so to Emmett Till. Cause trust me, this life's a fuckery. If that was my son, I would've risen my gun and ended all of your lives abruptly. Murder, murder, killing with the bars and all of my flows disgusting. Stone cold like Austin. Tried to steal my flows, then drop shit. That is not sick. Plot twist, had the plot, then you lost it. That must be the case.
Nadia Rose, she's not strictly grime. She's more kind of hip hop rap. but still very important, still sound system culture, still black-led grassroots, very, very important. And then, of course, there's MC Annie with her amazing hit, Paying Black Girls, and got to big her up for that, and a little clip for that, and also for her just denouncing the Tories as well. So please enjoy.
Girls in my area cold, dark skin, light skin, medium tones. Pumping braids got mini afros, thick lips got hips, some of us don't. Big nose contour, some of us won't. Never wanna put us in the media, bro. Want a fat booty like Kardashians, want a fat booty like my auntie got a yo. Wheel up the blood clot, tell her reload it. I've got the camera, my girls are posing. I need some backup, then my ones are rolling. Grown women things, I'm never at risk. Mind my own business, I'm never in mess. Who am I ain't bae, get a slice of the cake. Want a house with a view and a new pair of shoes. Keep it real from the jump, Gucci gang, little pump, little vibe, little bass, little kick, little snare, little lies, big truths. Do you, they don't care. Do you, they don't care. Get your ass at the box and build up from there. I don't have a gang with me, but I still walk with a gangster lean. I rock Nikes cause we think they're clean. MJ leather jacket, beat it Billie Jean. MJ leather jacket cause I think I'm bad. That's cool, I like it. The growth, the light, the pain, the fight. We love, we fight, we hurt, we cry. He paid the price, you'll be alright. Give me some time. I lied, conservative, far right. Fuck government, I'm tired. Guy talks a bit out.
Yeah, just to kind of sum up then, what we have is generation by generation, as there's relatively more and more women who step onto the mic in terms of sound system cultures, and more recently like, you know, grime and hip hop and drum and bass and jungle, the more women there are, the more other women and girls will feel that they can do it. And also one has to big up all the unknowns at the grassroots, all the people who produce, make tunes, mix tunes, organize parties, step on the mic, sing, who don't quote unquote break through, but who are often just as good as the biggest artists. Some of the DJs I've heard, I'm big up DJ Darky, Jason Patterson, oh my god bro, DJ Jaco, part of my old crew, Double Negative, back in the day. Got to big up Starks as well, often went back to back with Jaco. I mean, these DJs, they didn't break through, they weren't major, you know, international touring artists, etc. But their mixes and their sets were as good as any of the kind of top people on the scene that I ever heard. And there's countless thousands of people like that who are older or who are younger today, who are younger back in the day, who don't break through. And they're just as important as the people who quote unquote make it in the scene, because it's a collective social scene. It's not like these are the representatives, the elite, privileged, moneyed, relatively well-doing representatives. No, they're part of a collective community of people that if it wasn't for the grassroots, there would be no scene. There would be none of these artists, quote unquote, making it, etc. And it's not about making it, it's grassroots. That's what sound system culture is all about. It's coming from the ghettos, it's coming from the working class poor areas. It's an articulation of their interests, of their desires, of their views, of their celebration, of their poetry, of their lived experiences, of their reflections, of their fantasies, of their analysis, etc., of their social, political, cultural critique. It's all of that. Or even in the most negative way, it's still a reflection of something. And perhaps we're going to have an episode on representation of women in drill and trap and other problematics about that particular sound system scene, of which there's a lot to be discussed. So I hope that was of some interest to our audiences. And please do kind of, engage and discuss further and deepen the conversation. Many thanks.